What's up? How you doing? Jared. This is a ProTech Calmigo, California Legal Automatic. It's a sick little knife. But if you saw the video that I posted right previous to this, I was on the trail earlier today, and it failed actually. It didn't want to deploy. It hasn't failed since then, and it's actually been firing just like normal. You know what I mean? It hasn't had a problem since then, but it did fail for a while, and what it was doing was interesting because it was getting stuck past the button, because you can see when I depress this plunge lock, this actual button lock, I can push the blade in further than the actual detent. You can see it snap into place there. You can see the button snap up as I release the blade, and so it's actually coming down and making contact, with the inside of the frame there, which isn't, I mean, that's not a problem because it doesn't happen when you actually close the knife properly. But it was getting jammed. It was getting jammed in there. The button was actually jamming. And so when I closed the knife, it didn't engage. And I was actually able to push it past the locking point of the button. And it was gummy, right? And I really do think it's just pocket. I think that was just crap jammed in it. So I'm going to clean it out. And actually, I'm thinking about this is a ProTech, so it's Allen keys. So I need a different box. Yeah. I'm going to guess it's these two. So when you're disassembling an automatic, you want to make sure that the blade is open. And you probably want to tape it up just to be safe, but And what I'm going to need to do, so this is interesting actually, because it's a Torx head to remove the pocket clip. You can see that, and it's an Allen key to actually remove the scale itself, which is an interesting choice. I don't see why they didn't just use standardized hardware, but whatever. Drag one. I do like this pocket clip. I like the way, I don't know what was the first one that did this internal design on the deep carry pocket clip, but it's a good design. So if you're familiar with companies like Benchmade, there's a lot of other companies. That's just the first one, the one that pops to mind, where the screws are offset. Spydercos are like that on their deep carry pocket clip. Not all of them. They do have some like this. And I just like that design where you have to go through the pocket clip to actually get in there. I'm going to throw my screws in a little tray. So nothing gets lost. I'm going to break all the rest of these free. And actually, you know what? I'm curious about something. This is just a stupid thought that I'm having, but this is a Chris Reeves Allen wrench. I think they're the same size. Yeah. So I can use my, well, it's the same size wrench. I don't actually know what this one is. I'll look it up in a sec. I'll look at it in a second. Just gonna loosen all those screws up. Take the pivot out. Okay. And now, what I want to do is hold pressure. I'm going to hold pressure. You can see the way that I've got this down here, so I'm not actually hitting that button, but I'm going to hold the knife together, because when I take these screws out, it's going to relieve that little coil spring. There's a little coil spring set inside the inside, if I can do this right, inside the blade. We don't want it to pop undone and deform itself. So that's the back screw. That's the next screw up. I want to make sure that they stay orientated. You can see that there's a little bit of red Loctite actually on there. And this is the first time that I've disassembled this knife. But yeah, you can see a little bit of red Loctite on there. That Loctite did not bond. It was not effective. Because it would have been a lot harder for me to pull that screw out, and you can see that it's just all sitting in one location. So that was the application of that Loctite was a failure. Okay, now I got all the screws out of this knife. set it down. So let you see what I'm doing here, and slowly see if I can jimmy it apart. So we've got the back section up. Oh, see, I felt it pop. See the blade tilting there? So I'm going to let that hold it down. Move my scale. There's a little spring for the button. Pull the blade out. There's my coil spring. You can see the way that spring, this spring is jammed into that hole. It's plugged into the tang of the blade there, and it's stuck in there. It does not want to come out. See if I can push it through with my fingernail. Yeah. Come on. You know what? I'm going to leave it in there. Because it's got to set like that when it's assembled. Come on. It's got to sit flush when it's assembled. And so I'm just going to leave it there. I'll clean around it. See the way that this is done here? Big beefy pivot. Like that cone shaped pivot. See the track there, the actual track for the spring itself. Hold a little button out. That is a tight fit. That is some excellent milling right there. That is some excellent. See, I can't even get it back in. That's a good job there. You know, very little wobble. That's a really tight fit for that button. And you can see the way that this lock actually operates. There's that little plate right there, the little shelf coming off the edge of the button. Well, there. And so you can't depress the button. That's all it is. See, that stop pin is set pretty heavily into the aluminum. Yeah, it's in there. I'm just going to leave it. Doesn't need to come out. But it's got a lot of contact. You know what I mean? There's a lot of surface area contact between the actual stop pin and the aluminum, which is good for an automatic, because every time you push the button on this automatic, that blade is slamming open, right? And so it's good that it's got a lot of resistance built into it. You can see a little bit of Loctite there. So maybe it did break contact, just didn't work very well. So I'm going to take my paper towel and just wipe her out. Get all the gunk and grease and everything out of here. And I'll come back to you in a second. This is actually the other piece, and I haven't cleaned it yet. You see the amount of just debris and pocket lint and gunk and crap that's in there, and all of that crap. See the oil, that just looks like oil, and you think, oh, it's lubricant, but it's really not, because it's a sludge that's got all of this debris mixed in with it, and so it's not really working like a lubricant anymore. It's working more like a paste and slowing the blade down, and I do believe that's probably what stalled it out. As well, you know, just something in the actual button track as well. Some of that debris getting into that button track is what I think may have actually caused this knife to slow down. But keep cleaning it. Yep, got it all cleaned up. Looking good. I love ProTech just because everything in here is, I mean, the quality on this is tight. You may think, you know, oh, it failed, yeah, and I mean, yeah, it did. That's not good. You know, I've got a lot of side opening automatics that I've carried around that have been more dirty than this and haven't failed, but I do kind of think this was a freak occurrence. There's still some oil down in there. I didn't clean that one out, but that's all right. I don't think that this was, I mean, it's not like a design flaw, you know. This was just kind of a freak occurrence. A piece of lint got stuck in just the wrong area to cause something crazy to happen. But look at this blade, right? I think that this is an interesting blade design because the tang of this thing is so small. There's not a whole lot of blade there. It's not a problem in strength. I mean, there's still a decent amount of steel here for the amount of blade you got. It's a 2-inch automatic, you know what I mean? What kind of work are you going to be doing with this thing, really? So that's definitely enough steel there as far as that, but it's tiny, and it's, you know, this must have been a fun blade to design. That's just neat. Got the opening lock there. That's the opening stop, so when it's actually open, that's where it's open. And then that's your stop closure. That's your closure for when the blade actually, this little button pops in here to actually close the knife. It's recessed in the opposite way, but that's just a cool little design. And now you get to watch me struggle and probably get a little bit upset as I try to put it back together. Oh, see, this whole time I've been trying to take that spring out, and now that I'm trying to put it back together, the spring pops out. It just can't. What I'm going to do is put it on here. I'm going to see that spring, stick it in the little track, and this is actually makes it easier because I can find my pivot and line this up, right? And it's got that little shelf there because the stop pin's not in, but there is that little shelf of aluminum, and so I can use that to actually hold that in place, which I think could be an advantage. And now, I take my spring from my button, put that one in there, see if I can finagle my lock back in. Well, I'll leave a little bit of pressure. Now I'm going to stick the lock in there and stick the blade back down. Come on. Did it come out? No, my spring didn't come out, so I'm going to stick back down. This is all really dangerous. Tape up your damn blade, guys. See, it's being held in there. The blade's actually holding it in. But that's your lock. You can see that. That's your actual open lock. And so now, I'll take my top scale, stick my first thing, it's going to be protruding, stick my stop pin in. Now I'm going to see if I can find, without releasing, I'm going to stick this down. It's going to be easier to put it down. I'm going to hold the blade down. Just going to hold the lock in place. I'm going to try to get that lock to point up because it's sticking off to the side there. You see, I don't know if you can make that out, but I'm going to try to make it so it's pointed up. Make my job a little bit easier. Stick that detent in. See, now I'm just going to take my little tool, position my lock. Try to find, see right now I'm actually struggling to get the stop pin in. That's what's working with me. So I'm going to push down on the blade to get that stop pin in. The stop pin is in. And so now I want to readjust my little button. I would not suggest using a steel tool if you're worried about scratching it, because I probably will doing this. Alright, let's see. Got it up here. Oh, wait. My blade isn't sitting flush. See that? I've got a problem here. My blade isn't sitting flush, so crush back down. Alright. See, what's giving me trouble right now is that button. So I'm going to abort and completely release this whole thing. And let's go with this button first. Try to make this thing stick up straight again. Where's my hole? Get the stop pin in. Down. There we go. See? Now my button is aligned. Now you see, it's in place. So worry about the button first. And now I can actually try to depress it, get that stop pin back in there. My spring didn't come out, did it? Hold on. My little flashlight out and see if my spring popped out, because if that spring, the little tab actually popped out, I won't be able to close this thing down all the way. but it didn't. It doesn't seem as though it did, so I think what I'm working with now is the pivot itself. Yep, it was. So I just had to actually get this scale set onto that pivot. So now I'm reassembled. Check my alignment. Believe it or not, guys, there are people that can do that in probably less than a minute. You get the guy who's assembling these knives, you know, like it's his job, and he can probably do that in like 45 seconds. I'm going to keep pressure on the knife because I don't want to... I've got the pivot in, which will hold it all together, but I'm still going to squeeze it. I'm still going to maintain a decent amount of pressure because I don't want to torsion anything, you know. The springs are still working to force the knife apart. And if I relieve too much tension, it could be bad. So if that spring pops out... You remember, yeah, the way it's sitting down in that little track inside the scale, if it pops out and I torsion these screws down over it, it will bend it. It'll bend that actual screw, or bend the actual spring. And you don't want to permanently damage your spring in an automatic. That's bad. Obviously. Screws the rest of the way in. This one actually, you know, that Loctite may have done something. It's tougher. These ones just thread in. That Loctite, the one with the one up there at the top, this screw, it's a little bit tougher. So now I'm gonna tighten down my pivot the rest of the way. Back it off. Check the blade play. A little bit of blade play. Tighten it down. Blade play. No blade play. What is that? There's no blade play, but it's bumping. Yeah, so come back to the back. Oh, this screw is loose as shit. Give these screws a final tighten. It's a little bit tighter on the pivot. Solid. Action's good. Solid. Now needs a little bit of love. Get some blue lube. I'm going to put it right down there in that hole because I want to get it as close to the pivot as I can. Just a little bit of blue lube in there, maybe a little bit more. And listen, this is such a cool sound. It gets quieter. Do you hear it? I can feel it. I'm actually going to give it just another little drop. You see that in there? I'm just going to fill up that little locking surface and then work it in. This was a bad example for the sound. There it goes. You hear it? Quieter. Now, yeah, slams open with some authority now. Bam. I will reattach the pocket clip in a little while. Wipe off all this excess lube. Got it on my hand. Spread it everywhere. That's a ProTech Calmigo. This is a sick little knife. Even though it did give me some problems, I haven't really lost any respect for it. If you made it to the end of this video here, I've got my whole back pocket knife collection lined up. That's a Benchmade Impel, Benchmade Proper, ProTech Half-Breed, Spyderco Urban, Benchmade Mini Griptilian, ProTech Tantilla, Benchmade Bugout, and Benchmade 531 Pardue. These are my current back pocket selection. None of them have ever failed. I've never actually cleaned this knife. This one will be a fun video to do a disassembly on. No, that's a lie. I have disassembled this knife. Once. That's it. Y'all have a good one.